You seem a little quiet.
Maybe it's because I don't have my mic in front of my face.
That was way louder.
Yeah. I'm not that loud until it's actual recording
so
time.
So it really is a factor about a couple inches that determines whether or
these
not...
microphones are not nearly as sensitive as the Yeti. The Yeti, you could be like 2 feet away and it would still pick you up fine.
Yeah, which is why it sounded bad by comparison too, is because of room echo and stuff like that. Or if you're talking to two Yetis simultaneously, which is a weird sentence to say if you don't know their microphones, what happens is you start picking up on each other's microphones in the same room, which is really awkward.
Yeah.
Because then you have like a double echo in the audio.
Yeah, when we initially started off, we had used one Yeti that we would set between us.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
But...
we had tried doing 2 microphones once, and it almost sounded okay.
Yeah, if the microphone's too sensitive, it actually sounds worse when you give everyone their own microphone, even though that's the only sane thing to do normally, because the microphone's just so sensitive you can't do it that way. Anyway, welcome to Save the Universe podcast, episode 39. We're here to podcast again, but without Bird, because he got all paxed out from his PAX adventure in the last episode, and then he started calling him back, and he's gone now, and he's definitely not at the vet. He definitely didn't just forget that the podcast happens at the same time every week again.
I mean, he's at the vet because his bunny is sick.
Bunny is sick.
So like it's excusable.
Oh yeah, it makes sense that he's there, but also he did literally say he forgot, which he has said for the last 3 weeks. Because he's just been forgetting the podcast exists.
Well,
somehow.
To be fair, so this week he has been having this like kind of insane thing. Amazon
Bird's the crazy busy person who has an actual job outside of this.
Yeah, but the actual job once a year for 1 or 2 weeks effectively says, by the way, we need you to be available 24/7 for emergency, like more or less maintenance stuff. And then they cycle groups. So poor Bird this entire week has been called anywhere from in the middle of our recording sessions to 4 a.m. to solve problems. And
he is
so
now Dr. Birdcatcher.
Yeah, he is Dr. Birdcatcher. But so he's been dealing with that.
On call into the morning hours. When do they anticipate their workers being able to sleep?
The entire point of it is you might not get to. Luckily, he got like the day off and stuff like that. But on call is kind of this rare thing.
Shouldn't they have gotten like an on call group and then had specific hours set for each of them so that different people can handle it?
That would be brutal and horrible.
Because imagine if your boss is like.
Well, the idea is that they're a giant company that can have tech problems at any time, and they can't afford to have those tech problems happen. So people come into the rotation for on-call, so they are like the overflow people that can come in to help resolve problems when they actually come in versus the normal daily work schedule. And you can't have people that are permanently on-call because then like they're either going to be people that don't do anything normally and only come in when on-call stuff happens. So you're losing huge amounts of money for people that aren't working all the time. Or you work them, but then they won't be there at times. So like the whole point is to have.
What I was suggesting is that they switch the groups around, but the people within a certain group.
That's what happens. Is it gets switched around? Is that a different part of the overall population of workers is on call during different parts of the year?
Yeah. So Bird is this week, and then next week he will be no longer on call and won't have to ever think about this again. It's a week or two. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on call for a little bit, and then it goes away for like a year, and somebody else is on call, and there's always somebody who's on call.
Duty.
So that one stuff,
more or less,
kind of, where if something happens, if something goes wrong, where overflow people need to help with that thing, then the on-call people come in, and it has to be a rotating part of the normal population. Otherwise, you have like a ton of money being spent on like extra people that only come in emergencies or something, like substitute teachers. But like substitute teachers don't even work that way because like substitute teachers are like people that go into like a temp agency practically, and they sub when they feel like it, essentially. Actually live with a substitute teacher.
Yeah, usually substitute teachers kind of work through the district. They're not just like to one school, but they will go from school to school. And will be like passed around, but they're not like, you can't just like be like, oh, I feel like subbing today. You actually like get a schedule and stuff. Or you're like sitting around waiting for someone to bring you on.
Sometimes I would have another English teacher take over another English teacher's class.
Yeah, those were always fun because that was movie day.
Hey, It wasn't movie day for us, especially if they knew each other well.
There are a lot of substitute teachers that just do movie day.
Yeah, my track coach was a career substitute teacher and like sports coach, and he would just bring in like 200 loose leaf Sudoku puzzles and pass them out, and that was it. That was all you would do.
Exercise your brain, guys.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, the sub I live with talks about how like she likes it whenever she gets like she essentially wins the lottery and gets to sub for seniors because like, oh, well, they don't even care anymore anyway. They're just waiting to get out of here. So it's like, you're essentially like babysitting for the day, but for people that are basically adults. So it's like you just kind of chaperoning a room to make sure it's still not on fire at the end of the class or something.
I wouldn't even say that seniors in high school, like looking back on everything, there were immature people in college. Ugh.
Well, yeah, because in college, like, we're free now. We've escaped our parents for the first time in almost 20 years. And that's like what happens to a lot of people. But in senior year specifically, they're like, oh, it's over now. You've, for a long time throughout school and elementary, middle, and high school, there's like an uncertainty of your future that keeps going back and forth. And like, where am I going to go? But by the time you hit senior year, at least in your simplified high school idea of how life works, you've kind of hit some sort of cemented level of where you think you're going at that point, of like how your school's turning out. And so compared to everything else, everything's really chill and passive.
Yeah, I suppose when people get their tests out of the way and they've already been accepted at a college or something, they just wait out the last couple months.
Oh yeah.
Was it months when
people...
I
got early acceptance, so I got accepted about 8 years ago today. Yeah, I got accepted within like a week or two of getting into into college. It was like, oh yeah, you're actually no, it would have been 9 years now. I was accepted
gonna say 8 years ago. I was 2 years into college. We're not that far apart, are we?
No, you're a year older than me, or at least you're ahead of me in education wise. Though I think I was the first to graduate.
I don't know. All the school's over now.
Yeah. Hey.
It's all over. Yay. But life's a journey of learning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about video games.
Yeah.
In recent news, I completely pulled a 180 on Sonic Mania, opinion-wise.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean by what was the 180?
He didn't like the beginning because it was boring and rehashed.
Oh. What about this?
That's the opposite of what I said.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just spent the whole last podcast complimenting Sonic Mania and how great it was.
So you don't like it, then?
I don't like the second half of it at all.
Okay. Oh, Bird didn't like it. Oh, no. Bird really liked it. You also... whatever.
Is this the game where you create your own character?
No, that's Sonic Forces.
Oh, okay. I keep getting them mixed up.
Sonic Mania is it's normal to get them mixed up. I finished editing the first half of our playthrough, and I cite Sonic Rush as being the Sonic game that's like Mario Party. But Sonic Rush is some sort of like Sonic DS 2D game, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm wrong. But I'm wrong because it's always Sonic plus word. Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generation, Sonic Rush, Sonic DX, Sonic Adventure. Oh yeah, Adventure. That evokes meaning.
At least with Mario,
Mania.
every single game is kind of distinct in its like extreme way. Whereas like Sonic, I guess Sonic Heroes is pretty easy to remember, and Shadow the Hedgehog is pretty easy to remember.
The only reason why I remember Sonic Unleashed for being the one with the werewolf is because,
yeah.
Unleashed.
But like they're very...
I don't think I can give Mario credit for having okay titles, actually.
Really? Because Galaxy was fairly distinct.
There's two good names for Mario games. There's Mario Galaxy and Mario Sunshine.
Yes.
Those evoke meaning. But then there's Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario 2D Land. And
no, you're right. When
Super Mario Brothers U.
Yeah, when you get into the new Super Mario Brothers and whatever, I'm thinking about
Super Mario Brothers.
But Super Mario 3D World isn't even part of the new Super Mario Brothers franchise. But yeah, there is also an entire Mario Brothers franchise that literally is just the previous names, but with new in front of it. And they're not remakes of the old one, but they put new in it there for some reason. And now they're not new anymore, but they're still called new.
What's the new ones in about 10 years when they finally make another one of them gonna be?
Mario's a victim of how Nintendo can't name things. And so
True.
much like the Mario franchise has mostly the same naming scheme, until they really have a huge amount of imagination, do a really big, crazy revitalization of the franchise. In the case of Galaxy, Sunshine, or Odyssey, the 10 games in between each of those have the same naming scheme as the DS. Where you can't even tell what they are anymore.
I guess I think of those as the filler games because like 64, Super Mario 64,
the
Sunshine,
2DS
Galaxy.
XLI.
I would say the Metroid games and the Legend of Zelda games have
no
titles. No. So
it's
they
easy
just
to keep Metroid games
Ocarina
straight. There's
of
like
Time.
4.
No, there's a ton of Metroid games.
Majora's
No,
Mask,
but it keeps dying
Majora's
for long periods of
Mask,
time.
Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. You can tell what the game is about based on the title.
Well, yeah,
But,
because
like-
Zelda's a fantasy universe with a story, and this name is based on the story of the thing that happens in the game.
Yeah, there's a ton of like the classic like Metroid games. There's Super Metroid. Wasn't there like a Metroid before that, or did it start with Super Metroid?
There was just
There's
a Metroid 2.
Fusion, Metroid
I
2.
I was just taking a dig about how
Samus Returns.
Nintendo like stomped on that franchise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like no franchise has been mistreated more than Metroid, really, besides like
But
Star
I loved
Fox.
Prime. I love the Prime trilogy.
Yeah,
Star Fox, the franchise that has like 4 games.
Oh.
And
Yeah, but
many
it's-
of them can arguably not be called Star Fox games.
Captain Falcon's whole series, F-Zero, is kind of pissed on as well. They like to make these like beloved series and then forget about them for like a decade until like the nostalgia hits like a weird critical point.
I think the difference might be that I kind of view Captain Falcon as like a C-list like niche part of Nintendo, like you would think Kid Icarus, as opposed to like headline the big first like 6 names that you think of for Nintendo, a company known for big franchises, which of course immediately goes like immediately is Zelda and Mario, but then like you might include like Kirby and Metroid and Star Fox, and then you're like, oh crap, what happened to Star Fox? Oh no. Is that another Zelda game, but they called it Star Fox? I'm confused.
I remember when Star Fox, what was it? The one with Crystal in it.
The dinosaur one.
That's the
Actually,
one. That's the one that I was just talked about. That was like, is this a Zelda game?
Yeah, it was interesting because I believe reading about their initial like production for it, they were actually making a completely different game.
Dinosaur Planet.
Right, where Crystal was the main protagonist, and it had nothing at all to do with Star Fox. And then it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should tie this in.
It was going to be the hot. It was going to be the hot new Rareware property, and then it became a Star Fox game, even though it was still basically a Rareware game. And then it got mishmashed awkwardly, and they threw in an R-Wing section just to taunt people and make them extra mad when they realized that there wasn't going to be another one for the rest of the game. I did not make it very far in that game.
There were actually multiple R-Wing segments. Anytime you had to fly to, like, was it a different planet?
Do you eventually go to another planet? I don't think I stuck with it long enough.
Like an area. You had to fly somewhere, and every time you did, you had to do an R-Wing segment a la Kingdom Hearts.
Maybe one of these days Star Fox will be a topic of a Sad Games playthrough. Just to experience that thing in its entirety. And its tiny dinosaur escort missions.
From my experience, it wasn't actually like a bad game. It just
was called Star Fox.
Yeah, they kind of messed it up by making it what it was, when in reality they really should have just made it either its own product or like actually spent time on it. It felt kind of like, oh, here's an idea. Oh, but it's not going to do well. Let's slap Star Fox in. Like,
I just said that.
Yeah, I know, but like that's
cynical,
such an
right?
That's such an anti-Nintendo thing at this point. Like, even Rabbids, like the Mario Rabbids thing is kind of a masterpiece in its own right. And it's...
The issue is just that when you think of Star Fox, you're not thinking about a game where you Z-target your enemy and strafe around them with 3 hearts in the corner while you fight people with a staff and a melee weapon on ground against dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Did any of you guys ever play Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess crossbow training?
No.
Was Twilight Princess really in the name of that?
Well, no, maybe it was just crossbow training, but it had like the Twilight Princess version of Link.
Crossbow training. Yeah,
Link's
that's what it's
crossbow
called.
training? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's only called Link's crossbow training.
Oh, okay.
I remember the last time I did Unsucky Sunday for the Let's Play subreddit, somebody had actually submitted a crossbow training video, and I was like, This game exists? Why are you covering it?
What happened was, at least for my family, the only reason why we picked it up was there was this sale going on where if you selected a Wii, this was back when Wiis were still pretty scarce, even a couple years after their release. If you got it, you had to purchase like a couple more games, but then they would throw in another game or two and a special accessory. And the accessories weren't really that interesting, but one of the ones you could get was the quote unquote, rifle crossbow extension. You know how they had the wheels and stuff? And so that game came with it.
The Wii Zapper and stuff like that.
Yep.
Or if you bought a Cabela game, you had a ridiculously large plastic rifle that the Wii remote stuck into the side of, and you pretended to shoot bears or something.
Yep, so that's what it came with, and I didn't like it.
To be fair, the Wii would have been a really good platform to just spit light gun shooters onto.
Oh yeah,
that's what they did. That's what they did.
They kind of did. They kind of didn't. A lot of the mainstay light gun shooter games from arcades never even had a title.
Yeah,
on
but
the Wii.
Though, as somebody who worked at a Best Buy during the the popularity of the Wii, there were a lot of light gun games for it because I had to stock them, and I spent a lot of time looking at their boxes, walking up and down hallways.
We really
had
liked,
a whole area dedicated to Link's crossbow training because it had to be locked up because of the peripherals.
We really liked Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles. That was the game that we played before we started dating together, and that was a lot of fun. We were arguing with one another over what was better, shotguns or machine guns. And of course, you would blast everything away. But yeah. I got the final boss.
Yeah, so...
It gives points to the person who gets the final shot.
If you've never played Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles, it's a light gun shooter on the Wii where...
You play through the plots of the first several games.
Yeah, it's kind of like this weird mishmash where you just jump around the story. It's not very cohesive, but it's still kind of fun.
It's a bizarre idea where somebody essentially was like, what if we made a House of the Dead game out of the entire Resident Evil franchise? And so they made two light gun shooters.
It was actually good. It was probably one of the better light gun shooters I've ever played.
Yeah.
But
House of the Dead is good. That wasn't supposed to be disparaging.
We tried playing House of the Dead and kept dying.
Yeah, so the House of the Dead Wii port didn't have unlimited lives or anything, but you also couldn't put quarters in
and stuff in Resident Evil.
Yeah, so you could heal in Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles. It was not made for arcades, but the port for House of the Dead, literally you had 2 lives and you couldn't put quarters in or anything. So it was just
And if you're playing 2-player, the one person can continue on and nothing could be done for the second player. And it's
yeah, it was kind of hot garbage. But for Darkside Chronicles, you get to the last boss, you fight it, and it doesn't matter what your contribution was on the boss fight, as whoever got the last hit in got all the points for it. And the whole thing was worth more points than the rest of the game combined. So Shell just had 100,000 more than I did, and I was like, this is bullshit.
Oh, weird. Darkside Chronicles is supposed to be a prequel to Resident Evil 4. Because the Umbrella Chronicles was a remake of Resident Evil 0, 1, and 3 as a continuous story, but then they made a sequel called Darkside Chronicles that was just a standalone prequel to RE4. That's a weird choice.
Yeah. They were fun. For the Wii.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You had to hunt for things to do on the Wii that were fun. In the drought between Nintendo properties, basically. On a side thing, when I was Googling Link's crossbow training to verify its name, one of the first results I got in the image search is Link's crossbow training HD, a joke parody thing somebody made for April Fools, which is the Wii U port of Link's crossbow training. And it looks like a legit cover. He was posting it on Reddit, I guess, to screw with people on April Fool's Day as being a fake news announcement. He's like Link's crossbow training HD announced for the Wii U. But to loop all the way back to the original topic, what happened is we played the first half of Sonic Mania in one day, and I had a pretty good time overall. My main criticism is the part where I'm like I don't think I'm a Sonic fan in general, because there's a lot of like, I hit a speed ramp and look at me do 50,000 loop-de-loops and bounce through things, and I can't really tell what's happening. I guess some people like this, but when do I play again?
It's like those auto levels in Mario Maker.
This is sort of crazy, but imagine if
Sonic.
you saw from Sonic's perspective every time you spun around.
It would be sickening.
That would be, but it would be accurate.
Oh god, you mean when he's literally spinning in first person?
Yes.
So
I can imagine that. It looks a lot like a static screen.
Yeah, I have played a first-person Sonic simulator, kind of like the Green Hill Zone demo thing. It was something somebody had made back in, I want to say 2011.
That's the worst idea.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't help that it was just like a basic Unreal like mod that it's just like, let's make them go really fast and do loop-de-loops and jumps and shit. I think it was Metal Harbor maybe, and it had like a first-person mode. I don't know, but it was just so nauseating. I was just like, all right, I'm going to put this down and not think about Sonic for a long time.
Now, can you only do those loop-de-loops on straightaways, and it's something that you can't break out of? Or how does he steer like that if he does keep it?
In the games, generally the loop-de-loops just are... Well, in the 3D games, you just go through them. Most of the time.
In most of the 3D games, when you hit a loop-de-loop, it's basically just a cutscene we're not playing. And if you're playing Sonic 06, the game where that doesn't do that as often as it should, that's the game where it breaks itself and you die and you fly off into space and a billion wrong things happen, unfortunately.
If I remember right, that happened in DX too.
Yeah, it happened in DX also.
I definitely clipped through the loop-de-loop more than once and flung off to my death.
Yeah, the moment Sonic became 3D, all those parts where the game's supposed to essentially play itself for a bit are moments where you could just abruptly die by falling through the world. And it was like, this is an improvement. I'm glad we changed to the 3D. You fixed it. But so we talked about last time how I liked all the boss fights. They were like inventive and creative, and they weren't just hit Robotnik 4 times as he floats a little bit and maybe has a thing spinning around him. Like, it was more interesting than the previous ones were. When we got to the second half of the game, the levels keep getting longer and longer and longer while still having a 10-minute time limit, which, like, when I played Sonic games as a kid, I didn't even know there was a time limit in Sonic because you couldn't take 10 minutes to go through a level. That wasn't like a thing, really. Like, there were not very long levels in old Sonic games. But in this new game, the levels are really, really big, but they kept the 10-minute time limit, even though I'm not even sure it even means anything for the gameplay. I think it's just there because it existed in the old games, and they just keep stuff from the old games kind of automatically because it's meant to capture nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia, whether or not it makes sense to do so. So you hit a point where the levels themselves are like 8-9 minutes long while you're just kind of wandering around aimlessly, not having any idea which direction is actually your goal, because in Sonic Mania, you definitely don't get to rely on the platformer universal rule of go left or right. Like, you constantly are bouncing up and down and spinning in circles, then going what seems to go backwards. And what we started to notice over time is not only were the levels getting more and more obscure and gimmicky and weird and bloated, but also they started seemingly copy-pasting rooms over and over again. And the only way you could tell that you were even in a new room was because there was rings there. Like, oh, this looks like the same place we were in before 2 minutes ago. Are we going in circles? Oh no, there's rings here. I guess we're progressing, maybe? And then, like, every time you hit the end of a level, it's a surprise because there was no real sense of progression along the way. You just hit the ending. You're like, oh, I guess we made it in time. I was worried. We had 90 seconds left, and I didn't know it was going to happen. But then you hit the boss fights, and there's a boss fight at the end of every single level, which is there's 12 worlds, 24 levels overall, and basically every single one ends in a boss fight or some kind of gimmick room or some kind of final challenge. And I found that specifically in the second half of the game, the boss fights went from being fun and inventive and intuitive to being like really chaotic and confusing, and like it starts to highlight how weird the concept is of combat in Sonic games. Like, you play Rayman and you run up to a dude and you can like press like the punch button and you punch the dude. And in Mario, if the enemy's not covered in spikes, it's usually accepted that you can jump on them and that stomps them, and that's how you fight things generally. That's like how it works. It's either covered in spikes or on fire, or you can jump on it, is kind of the...
With Sonic, you jump into them and you hope.
Yeah, in Sonic, you jump into the air and start spinning, and sometimes things can be hurt and sometimes things can't be hurt, and the distinction between what can and can't be hurt on contact is variable, and which parts of them can be hurt is variable, and there isn't even like a consistency of like, do you jump on the enemy or do you jump at them from below? Like, It seems to be that when he's spinning at a certain speed in midair, that midair spin jump is what causes the damage to happen. But you can't always tell when it's going to happen or what can be hurt by it. And sometimes individual parts of an enemy can be hurt while the other ones can't, and it's not always intuitive there either. And then you start hitting bosses that seem to have no particular vulnerable point, and you're just jumping at them, and you just kind of... It's like just a dice roll as to whether or not you're going to hurt them or they're going to hurt you, because the game isn't intuitive in how its damage systems work, which I didn't think I'd be praising 3D Sonics, but that's actually the one... probably the only improvement that 3D Sonics make is that the air dash that Sonic gets in all the 3D ones, where you jump up in the air, then you press jump a second time to like hit somebody with a homing attack, that has a clear communication of I'm hitting dude. Like you hit the guy with your air dash, so that's an attack. It doesn't make sense how that attack operates in universe, but at least on a gameplay level, you're like, I understand how attacks work. In 2D Sonic, you're just jumping at people. And sometimes you jump at people and you land on them and it hurts them, and sometimes you hit them from below and it hurts them, and sometimes the same thing happens against the same enemy, but it doesn't seem to hurt them. And so when you hit boss fights, you're like, we have a system where I have one hit and then I lose all my rings, then a second hit kills me. So I have to scramble for rings every time anything goes wrong, but I have to sit there and experiment over and over again about how to hurt the guy, which keeps making me lose the rings, which keeps making me grab them all again so I can keep experimenting. But this is we're still working with Sonic 2D with lives. So the game has 3 lives to get through 2 levels to finish the world. And if you run out of lives, you start over the entire world. So you can lose all your lives just trying to experiment against how to fight the boss of the second level of the world, and then get sent back to replay 20 minutes of world to get back to the boss that you still don't know how to beat because you don't know why you couldn't hurt him before.
I am so glad the gaming industry has moved past limited lives and
it's
limited
a bummer.
continues. Yeah.
Like, at some point we just started, like, I felt really cheesy about it, but at some point I'm like, well, I'm playing, like, this premise is, I'm playing a co-op series with Andrew. Hey, Andrew, you're Tails, you can't die. Try to hit that guy. Like, we made genuine progress through bosses because I would sometimes just cower from the boss and let Andrew try to find out how to hurt it. And he's the one that played every Sonic game that was 2D back in the day, and he's the one that we gave me the controller to play the protagonist because we thought he'd be too good at the game. And even he's like, I don't know how to hurt these things. Like, there's bosses that are very unintuitive. I can't even say they're hard.
And they don't have tells or, like, weird little cutscenes or things in the area. I suppose I'm used to games where the boss battle, sometimes the boss isn't even reachable until you fulfill a number of prerequisites to harm it so that it is reachable or that something's exposed, like a device or... an element or something that you're supposed to change in the environment to make it vulnerable.
The Sonic games are you fight a boss on a single screen, like Mega Man. Like, there's no world involved and stuff like that. It's just you, and all you can do is jump. And there's an enemy that you need to hit like X number of times to kill, and you don't really necessarily know what the trick is. And if you fuck up or don't know because the game doesn't tell you, then you start the entire world over. So it all boils down to how intuitively designed the boss is. And what's weird is that the first half of the game felt like its bosses were really intuitive, and the second half of the game, I'm like, I don't know what you want from me, man. And I think that actually, like, I don't know how far Bird was last week when we talked about it, but I think that might have been... I think that's part of what he said. I don't know if he was talking about vehicles or bosses or something, but I think last week he said something along the lines of, like, there like are parts of the game that are, like, incomprehensible to him, and I think I encountered that essentially. And so I guess we'll see what his later opinion is when he comes back and talks about it next week, maybe. But yeah, like, Sonic Mania didn't stay as positive as it was at first, which is a bummer because I was, like, really positive on it at first, with the caveat of being like, it's a Sonic game and I don't think I actually like this franchise that much. I was still like, this is off to a good start. I can see why people like this, and I'm not, like, hating it. I just will probably never come back to it. But now I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this.
I'm just waiting for Sonic Forces to somehow be, like, actually masterpiece level, and everybody's just, like, really confused and not sure how to handle it.
That they finally make a masterpiece 3D Sonic game for the first time.
Yeah, like, it's really good. It's perfect. Everybody's like, oh man, Sonic's actually, like, a solid product. And then Sonic...
I'll be blown away.
Sonic 2018 comes out, and then it's just... kissing the princesses again.
I will be totally blown away if like a genuinely great 3D platformer comes out that's called Sonic, because like I played Sonic Generations, and like there's whole chunks of that game where all they're doing is taking maps they made before and remixing them to supposedly improve them, and even that one was still like, what is this level? How did this even... This wasn't good this first time or the second time. Like, did you think you fixed it? I don't know what happened here. And boy, oh boy, they would keep in certain boss fights because they're just like fan favorite, like popular boss fights, like Sonic versus Shadow. But like, they've never been well done, and they stayed not well done in the remake. But they were just better resolution, and they don't. There's ones where I don't think they even changed the fights.
Scoot away.
We'll see how it turns out. I can't wait for Sonic Forces to come out, because playing a bad Sonic 3D game is really entertaining.
I feel like Sonic bosses should never actually be bosses. They should actually just be a level you're running through, and like the boss kind of goes by at the same time. You hit him like once or twice and then you progress, almost as like kind of a not a quick time event, but like the just trigger to continue, and if you don't, you take a hit and then it continues. Because I've never understood fighting an enemy in a Sonic level, period. I think the only Sonic boss that I actually remember being good was when Sonic Adventure 2. Shell, can you scoot over? You keep like scooting closer to me, and then it makes
we have
squeaky
armchairs,
noises.
so the arms are...
Over the course of every podcast, when we're sitting next to each other, Shell slowly scoots closer and closer to me for whatever reason, and then when I try and move, my chair makes this like awful squeaky noise. Anyway, you've played Sonic Adventure 2, right?
Yep.
Okay, do you remember...
Boy.
Yeah, do you remember the Sonic boss? It was Eggman in the desert right before he was going to launch or something, and there was like a big egg mech, and 90% of it was just platforming. You were just supposed to like platform around and then eventually hit him on the noggin, and that was about it. I think that's the only Sonic boss I've ever actually felt like it was well designed for Sonic. Because all the other ones were just like, here's an enemy, jump and try and air dash them a bunch of times, and that got kind of boring.
That's definitely a reoccurring thing in the franchise. I don't really remember the specific one you're talking about, because there's been so many boss fights where like there's an Eggman robot with like weird arms or floaty bits, and you platform to hit the right part or something like that. There's like 10 of those throughout the franchise, so it's really hard to remember which one it is. But they actually had some decent ideas for boss fights a little bit in Sonic Unleashed, I believe it was, which is that you'd be running on a track during the boss fight, and the boss fight would be a flying robot that's trying to shoot you with lasers that have like a telegraphed like damage zone, and you're kind of dividing your movement into 3 different lanes, so you can press the bumpers to switch lanes rapidly. So you would switch lanes to dodge the attacks themselves, or you would jump when it's like a shockwave or something like that, and your goal would be to keep boosting towards the enemy, and so that you're close enough to actually land a hit on them. And like that's a boss fight built around running and dodging projectiles, so it generally makes sense. There was always something wrong with every single one, though. There was always a weird part where the experience would just kind of strangely break. And oftentimes one of the weird issues that would come up is just the idea that like they had this nice, snappy 3-lane system, but then they wouldn't stick to it well enough or something. Like your Sonic would kind of just meander at times, or the camera would try to arbitrarily and dramatically change perspectives as you switch to like running on walls and ceilings or something, and then the camera changes angle, and then your character like wanders off, and then you can't like reorient them back onto the lanes, and the whole fight starts breaking.
Well, I think part of it is Sonic has never been good at the transition and the division between
when you want to press buttons or not.
Well, that, yeah, but like, so the 3D Sonics almost feel more like a racing game, because in a 3D space you can cover a lot more ground than a 2D game. Ish. And so they almost kind of are trying to go for that racing game feel of like you're going really fast, but they still want it to be a platformer, and they can't really figure out how to like, you know, reconcile the two. So they just mix them and they say, fuck it, it's close enough. And then it never is. It's never good. I mean, how many people have seen that Barry Kramer going over the Sonic cutscene and how like weird, awkward that was? Like they don't even know themselves how to put it together.
That's effectively Sonic Boom. That's big red button though. Those people are really. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those people went on to make if I've heard correctly, they're the people that went on to make Friday the 13th, and now they're making the first-person shooter part of Star Citizen.
Wait, Friday the 13th as in a game based off the movie?
Yep.
Yes.
Huh.
So that game's famously like unfinished and glitchy and like a weird mess that like has some cult following because it's like a decently original like idea execution, but it's like it's known as being a mess as a product. And the same.
You guys were playing. Did you guys play it before?
No.
Oh, because I remember you watching something where there were all these like teens at a cabin or a series of cabins.
I was watching Funhouse play it, and it was awful.
I see.
It's really worrying that the people that made Sonic Boom and Friday the 13th are now supposedly working on the first-person shooter part of Star Citizen.
I'm trying to figure that out, because I just looked at Big Red Button's website, and it looks like they're doing VR stuff.
Now, wasn't Sonic Boom also a television show?
Yeah, they did a 3DS game, a TV show, and a Wii U game. It was supposed to be like the revival of the Sonic franchise, and kind of a whole new branding, and like really trying to like kind of make it more kidsy again. And it was not.
Let's see. I'm looking. I think I was talking about the wrong studio in Big Red Button's case. I think it's supposed to be Ilphonic. Yeah, Ilphonic developed Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric. This gets really confusing because Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric is listed as being developed by Big Red Button, but then Ilphonic is listed as developing Sonic Boom. And that gets really confusing.
It's weird. I'm looking at it now. Big Red Button definitely had a hand in it.
I'm wondering if they changed names or something.
I wouldn't be surprised if the company changed its name to escape its past.
Because like if you're famous for making bad games, you might try to obscure your history a bit.
Yeah, because right now the only thing they have on their website is the Arc Slinger, which is like a mobile. Yeah, they might have buried it pretty hard.
I think it's one of those like tactical rebranding to.
Yeah, I don't think Big Red Button is doing the Star Citizen FPS section.
It's listed. Let's see. In August 2015, I think it is. The development and support for Star Citizen, Ilphonic laid off 6 employees, 3 of which were involved in development. They're listed as working on the space trading and combat first-person shooter segments of Star Citizen.
Oh, this is Ilphonic you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, how many games actually have multiple studios working on separate sections?
Many, and all of them. Yeah, so Ilphonic apparently did help with Sonic Boom. They have nothing to do with Big Red Button. That's what I was stuck on.
It's hard to track, but I guess Ilphonic is involved in Sonic Boom, Star Citizen, and Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's a bad track record. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of leery about Star Citizen. A ton of people are like really asking me about that. And it's like, are you going to play Star Citizen? Because, you're big into No Man's Sky. And I'm like, it feels like Goddess to me.
It's a whole lot of money dedicated to a promise, and not a whole lot of like it absolutely feels like the same hype loop that happens with a game like No Man's Sky, where like everyone's so into this idea, but like this game that's in their fictional mind may not even really line up with what's actually being made. And like it's really, really easy to hype things up. Like I really tried hard to drill this into people's heads in my existing audience back when No Man's Sky came out, because I was preemptively talking about all the ways that No Man's Sky was going to suck. And and one of the ways I drew that towards that was I was like, let's go way back into the past. Let's talk. I made a video talking about my favorite game before Dark Souls came out, at least, because for a while there, my favorite game ever was Mass Effect 1. And it's still I love Mass Effect 1. It's fantastic. But when it came out, I was watching those trailers about the exploration and the galaxy navigation and their amazing gargantuan world. And all you have to do is go back to 2006, watch the Mass Effect 1 original trailers talking about the exploration and everything, and talk about and look at how easy it is to sell the public on the idea of how incredible your exploration and gargantuan galaxy is going to be, and how that's going to be the best thing ever. And just watch those trailers and think about how easy it is to think this is going to be great. And then go back and remember what it's like to play Mass Effect 1 when it comes to the actual galaxy exploration and the Mako segments and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, that's what those trailers were about. And the same thing goes for No Man's Sky. All those trailers built up to being that game. And it's like, it's so easy to get imaginative and hopeful about a concept without ever getting your hands on it. And now at this point, people have been doing that for this game for like 4 years or something. How long has it been now? Like,
as long as I've been a YouTuber, I believe.
Is it possible that they were really gung-ho about the idea, wanted to follow through with it, put this out to like pique people's interest, and then as soon as they got further along in the production realized it was unfeasible or that they should dedicate their resources to something else, then they ditch it?
That's generally
if you're
true.
talking about Mass Effect, those trailers were about releasing the game when it was actually coming out soon, I think. So at that point, they knew what they had.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they made the mistake of trying that again with Andromeda. Andromeda was supposed to... They pledged the exact same promises the first game had, and once again got arguably even further away from their goal. So I looked up Star Citizen. It says development began in 2012, originally planned for release in 2014, and again in 2016. As of 2017, There's no official release date.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing is super, super ambitious, but also
who are
really
Cloud
scary.
Imperium Games? Have they ever made anything before? They literally made for this one company. Oh, wow, they're a made-up company just for this one game.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody that has more attachment to this and hype about this specific franchise has an idea of like the roots of the developers and what they did before this, but like there's like on a surface level, I'm not losing a lot of like, what do you call it? Credentials or history, or you know what I mean, like back catalog of evidence of
so
being able to
they've
handle
got
this.
the guy that made the Wing Commander series, which was great back in the day. Same thing with Freelancer.
That's an ancient game.
Yeah, it is ancient,
though.
That's
he
the
might
problem.
have like a cool idea or something for the game, but like won't know much about modern development.
And as far as I can tell, the other guy that's listed as like one of the main guys mostly produced movies.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So scary. Always scary.
I'm not going to say that Star Citizen has to suck, but I'm saying I won't be surprised.
My main thing is just with those games, they're too big for right now.
Yeah.
Eventually, we will get something that really is what No Man's Sky promised to be, just by the, like, what is it, Thousand Monkeys principle?
Or just have the idea that a company has never put out a game together is now been working on one game for 7 years.
Yeah.
They were founded in 2010 to make this one game, apparently.
After WildStar, I don't hype for games anymore.
Nope. You were bananas for that.
I really wanted a sci-fi MMO.
I will hype for games when it feels like they've got the credentials already. Like No Man's Sky, that was Hello Games. They'd done what? It wasn't Action Hank. It was the other one.
Joe Danger.
Yeah, Joe Danger.
Which is a fun game.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
It's a 2D side-scroller.
Yeah, it was a fun game. Well made. What? But, like, games that I do get hyped for are, like, Divinity Original Sin. Like, as long as they don't fuck it up, which they didn't, I knew that it was going to be great.
They're a company that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and have had a long history of failures to learn off of.
Yeah, every game getting gradually better than the last one, and to the point where Dragon Commander itself was compelling enough that I was interested in playing it, and it was like a cult hit, and they're only growing from there.
We never finished Dragon Commander.
It's because the gameplay for Dragon Commander is atrocious. They should never make an RTS, but the actual, like, talking to people segments are great.
You could marry a skeleton woman.
Well, see, that was the compelling part.
Marry
it was
the
talking
one.
to people. Yeah, we're going for the lizard
the weird
lawyer.
dating simulator Dragon Flight Sim RTS game.
I would 100% play a Larian Studios dating game because it would be a roller coaster.
I mean, did you guys miss it when we were playing Divinity Original Sin 2 about how your character was being prompted to tell the story of the dragon who married the elf princess?
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So I
That's
suppose,
a nice tie-in.
I suppose
hadn't been paying
canonically,
attention.
you're supposed to marry the elf princess.
Yeah, but like That's funny because she's the slut that wants to sleep with the entire ship.
Yeah, I heard about that. Doesn't she cheat on your character?
Yeah, you can have her sleep with the entire ship, and it gives everybody
wait,
morale.
what do you mean by you have her do that?
You can give her permission to sleep with the entire ship, and she will. Doing so, the entire ship gets a morale boost.
What?
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. That's part of the reason why I said no elf. Let's go lawyer chick.
Well, I liked the lizard lady a lot more.
She
was a judge.
Hey, don't slut shame.
But I really am actually hyped for a couple of games that are coming out. I mean, Super Mario Odyssey, by all rights, probably deserves the hype it gets. Just because, I mean, at this point, the pedigree is just so good. Even the iffy Mario games are amazing. There's SteamWorld Dig 2, which I'm looking forward to. Hob. Do you know about Hob?
I don't think so.
You might be interested in Hob. It's like a Metroidvania puzzle game.
Is it by the Torchlight people?
Yeah, made by the guys that made Torchlight, which is like a little bit of a jump, but at the same time it looks really nice. And then there's also Echo, which might be kind of interesting.
You know what else is a Metroidvania puzzle game?
Yeah, Fidel.
Toki Tori 2 Plus.
Oh, never mind.
Wait, Toki Tori?
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried playing Toki Tori 2 Plus. I actually really liked Toki Tori, the first one, but also that studio kind of died, so
2 Plus made a weird. It made waves for a little bit in the critical circles on YouTube because it was it was weirdly it was a Metroidvania puzzle game where the thing stopping you from navigating the world was just learning each individual puzzle mechanic as you go, but technically you could have gone everywhere from the beginning, and it's supposed to be a shockingly in-depth experience, and I've just been waiting to play it sooner or later, but sure wish it didn't look like that.
Yeah, everything that I think that's Two Tribes games. Everything they made was actually really well made, but they didn't know the markets, so they never did well, and it sucked. Rive was pretty good too, but their timing, their advertising, their whatever, it just was atrocious.
Were you saying that the company is dead now or something?
Yeah, Two Tribes Games shut down to go off and do other things.
Oof.
What do you mean by shut down and then do other things?
So Rive, the game they put out most recently, was their last one. Previously, they'd made a whole bunch of games that nobody gives a shit about. I guess they made or helped with
Worms
World Party, Bonk's Return, Garfield, Tale of Two Kitties. Really? Yeah, a whole lot of nothing. Then they made Swords and Soldiers, which was actually did really well. Oh, they made Edge too. Yeah, they started just getting on indie development because making licensed stuff was not working for them. And then they redid Toki Tori, which was originally a Game Boy game. They redid it and made it better in 3D.
It defunct?
Yeah.
That's what they use when something has been abolished?
But yeah, now it is defunct. They've stopped development and are moving on to other things, I guess. It's interesting to see game developers that are doing okay willingly actually just stop.
Yeah. Sometimes they just have different ideas where they want to go from there on out.
Yeah. It was also only 5 guys working there tops.
Oh.
Or maybe 2. It was not much.
That's small.
I guess they did file for bankruptcy because Toki Tori 2 didn't do well.
Oh.
Yeah.
That'll make playing that game feel tragic.
Yep.
Oh no.
Happens.
What had bankrupt THQ when we were talking
their
about that?
dumb drawing game that they decided to go all in on physical physical
Oh right, you're talking
drawing
about the physical
tablets.
tablets.
Yeah,
right.
so it did really well on the Wii, and they're like, okay, let's put this on every platform and overproduce, and they drained themselves doing so. And I can still go into GameStop and find that game.
I haven't heard anything
U-Draw?
about
They still
Darksiders
stock
3
it?
yet.
Some places do. I will walk in and there's a U-Draw on the shelf, and I'm like,
What?
huh.
That's amazing.
I mean, I don't go to GameStop that much, so this is within the last 3 years.
Yeah, I can't say that I've looked. For years now, every time I go to a GameStop, it's literally to pick up a console or some kind of video game currency card because I'm having to work around some kind of technical issue for paying for games or something like that. Or literally that new release, can I have it now? Like, because I'm getting physical for some reason. I had to, I went and got a physical copy of Tokyo Mirage Sessions, for example. So I don't actually walk in around the store. I literally walk to the desk and say, "Can I have that game?" And then I leave. Because the store is pointless if you know what you want, because not all the games are fake. They're boxes. And they give you the real one.
As a kid, I'd love to go to GameStop just so I could dream about all these games I could never play because my parents would never let me buy any of them.
We would like to find good deals on used ones. But now the deals aren't probably any good.
Yeah, the deals are bad. And like now that I'm an adult that pays attention to almost every single new release, it's like, oh, this is just shit I already know about or if I already played. Like, why bother? But I guess that's more of kind of a me being super tied to the industry thing as opposed to a me just knowing better. But
yeah, there's not often a lot of reason to buy used games anymore because so much of the game, like almost anything made in the last 10 years has digital copies now. And so like you just wait for it to go on sale incredibly cheap as a digital copy, which happens all the time because they don't have to
buy
keep a
Myst
store
3 and
open.
4 though.
Yeah, I had to buy physical copies of Myst 3 and 4 because they're ancient games, but those games aren't from they're very much not from the last 10 years. But most games, like, it's like, oh, I didn't quite get around to Dead Rising 4 at launch, or 3, or some other game like that, and it's like, oh, well, here it is for $3 on Steam a few years later. It's like, what? Like, it would actually be more expensive to buy a used copy at GameStop than some of the sales you get for these games nowadays. Yeah, that used to be a PC thing, but now it's also an Xbox One and PS4 thing on a regular basis. Like,
also, also, with a lot of the consoles, because they nix backwards compatibility and people have moved on from older systems, like you really have no need for the discs of the older games, right?
Depends, but yeah, generally most things are just digital codes nowadays and the discs are just useless, at least for PC. Console discs are still useful, but as a YouTuber, I actually try and avoid them because my PS4 sometimes gets kind of loud. Like I was having that problem with Destiny when we were playing it.
Wait, but PS4 is backwards compatible with 3, 2, 1?
Nope, it's not.
That's what I mean. That's what I was just saying. That like people have the new systems now and they can't use the old discs. Well, so even if they wanted to,
that's their own choice. They weren't like forcefully evicted from having their old consoles. Like if they want to play the old games, then they can just play the old games on the old console that they have no reason to sell because they won't even make good money off it anyway.
No, I was just saying for like new people that are buying their first console and getting the most recent one, it's a little bit prohibitive going back and going to find used versions of older games because they would have to buy 3 systems in order to play them.
It's almost not even worth it to some degree because like HD remakes are super popular nowadays, so like
for Nintendo, but what about the other ones?
Well, I mean, Okami is being
I love
HD re-released. They're re-releasing the entirety of the dot hack games.
Hack? Really?
Yeah, they are. They're re-releasing like
I've always been interested in seeing the manga and the anime for that, but never got around to it.
They're not good. Only the games are good. And even the games are extremely long. Like, I had a friend who's so into dot hack, he was trying to get me to play them, so we could like discuss it, and I was like, oh, maybe I will. And I look at like dot hack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm like, no.
When was that originally released? Could that arguably be one of the first series made about people playing MMO in a game?
It generally was, yes.
The game within a game.
Yeah.
The show about people that are stuck in a game, and then we made a game about the show about the game with the show with the people, the game. Coma. Is it a boy or a girl? Nobody can tell. I don't know. Yeah. I don't remember dot hack anymore at all, but I remember it not being satisfied with it by the end.
It was...
All I remember is that the main character has the weird hat and teal hair and is a boy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was the pink-haired girl.
Well, dot hack comes from the family of anime and video games and whatever, where every female character is dressed immodestly. So the main characters look... most of the main males will look effeminate, and all the chicks will have very little actual clothing on, or they will look like they're wearing like a giant dress thing, and it's generally pretty obvious from there too. And
that
then
was a ride. Was that one of those
the
anime
games are
that
actually
ends
really
with like on a really vague note,
yeah, it does.
like Wolf Rain, where it's
Yes.
just like the final note is like the final the entire episode. Like there was a period of time of specific brands of anime that would often get aired on like Adult Swim, where when you finally got to the finale, the entire final episode or two felt like some kind of weird foggy dream because of how like inarticulate it started to get, and then it just kind of rolls to cuts to credits, and then the show ends, and you're like, what happened?
I think it was one of those where they were trying to introduce this like kind of super cerebral sci-fi element that like was kind of sinister going ons in the background that are almost like inexplicable phenomenon to begin with, and they're trying to tie it into a bunch of people playing a video game. And so when it came time to like tie it up, they're just like, and it was this and this and this, and then it ends and everybody wakes up and everybody's happy, and it's like, wait, I missed that. Can you go back? No.
It's actually kind of remarkable how much the aesthetic of Dot Hack looks like Phantasy Star Online to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me kind of just want to play Phantasy Star instead.
We tried doing it. It was fun, but some of those side quests were like worthlessly annoying.
Phantasy Star Online episodes 1 and 2 feels like a really specific expression of like psychosis, where you just like press a 3-button combo sequence over and over again with a specific timing, almost like hypnotically, and then 200 hours later you've beaten the game and you're not really sure what you did differently along the way.
I think for me, Phantasy Star Online was more about the setting and kind of the mystery of it all, and then it never really actually answered any questions. You're like, well, I guess that was kind of fun. And I got a frying pan now that makes a really satisfying noise when I hit enemies with it.
Phantasy Star Online was one of those biggest cases of a game that I was really into for some reason, but I couldn't articulate what it was about it because it wasn't the part where I was hitting buttons to play a video game.
No.
Something about like the environment and the sounds and the feedback of hitting things, like something about the overall experience besides the part where I'm just pressing a button like,
it was one of the first...
like not the point.
It was like one of the first kind of action RPGs with like not deepish RPG mechanics, but like at the time, I mean, that was a Dreamcast game. There really weren't a whole lot of like other functional action JRPGs out there that you could play with like friends or whatever. And like, geez, what other action RPGs were there at the time? Not many.
We're talking early 2001.
Yeah.
This is like the same time Diablo 2 was around.
Yeah, Diablo 2 was around at this point. But
Usually
those
the games were isometric, I would say, if they were an action RPG that had multiplayer.
You would click on things.
Let's see, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Let's see
that
what year
was
that
PS2
came out.
though. That was years later.
That came out 2001. Same year as Phantasy Star.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
It had a It had a head start of most of 2001 though, because Phantasy Star was the beginning of the year. But yeah, that's like the same-ish time. And that was
Dark Alliance was definitely
co-op.
like Dark Alliance was
Dark
definitely
Alliance.
better from like a gameplay perspective
because it was D&D.
Yeah, but it did not have the setting to go for it. Like, do you like dark and dreary, vaguely catacomb-looking passages all the time?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, so many games are dark and dreary.
And I
now.
don't like it. It's so
I really
boring.
want color.
Kind of on that topic, actually. Have you heard anything about Project Octopath Traveler? Or no idea?
These are all new sounds for me.
Okay.
You could have made that up just now.
I could have. And with a name like
And
that,
I
I
did.
probably should have. No. So the people that made the Bravely Default game are making a more or less kind of an I Am Setsuna like for the Switch.
Oh.
Where it's like kind of a return to form for JRPGs.
But you're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
That's because you annihilated an entire village several times over.
There's a couple of things about it. So when I say like I'm Setsuna like, I mean it's in the same vein as I'm Setsuna, Golden Sun, Secret of Mana. You know, kind of.
Wait, those are really different.
Well, like the
storytelling. The worst part about evoking I Am Setsuna is that literally the only thing I can think about when I think about that game anymore is a total lack of vision or creativity or originality.
The last episodes of that.
Yeah,
we finished that.
Yeah,
you didn't put all the episodes.
I think Wander has finished about 20 games and fully recorded them that haven't been ever released.
Yeah, probably.
Even though some of them were started and then just stopped on the channel.
Yep. But so
like this podcast.
When I say I'm Setsuna, I just mean like kind of the classic JRPG style. Obviously, different mechanics and stuff like that. And I can't tell you if the vision is good, but like the voice acting, because everything is voice acted, is really nice. The problem is they're doing like it looks like Final Fantasy VI sprites and stuff, but on 3D environments, which is a little odd. And then it gets kind of bloomy and washed out. So it almost feels like you took an old JRPG and then tried to run it under a 50-cent Blood in the Sand filter.
What?
Yeah.
A very specific thing to latch onto.
But that is the game I point to when I'm talking about like modern brown.
What?
Because like
so what?
What is it?
What's the name of the game again?
Project Octopath Traveler.
Because this definitely doesn't come up on the developer.
Yeah, it's a new thing. They announced it a couple of days ago, and they have a demo out. But you play as one of 8 different characters, and each has their own story that you go through. So 8 different campaigns, and I think they like intersect at different points, so you can kind of see the different sides of everything.
But so far, you can only play as
the demo only lets you play as like the first half hour of both characters. But each character has like their own combat style, sort of, and they've got their own like kind of interact with the world ability, like the can break rocks or can do whatever. But it's a little bit more nebulous. But it's got a really cool combat system where every enemy has like an elemental weakness, kind of Persona style, and if you hit them with the elemental weakness the right way, they get stunned, and then you get to hit them for bonus damage. But there's a boost system, so every turn you get +1 to your boost gauge. And you can use that to either attack an enemy like multiple times or really buff the damage of one of your spells. So it's a little bit more like interesting tactically than say, Final Fantasy VI was, at least from the outset.
I found the point of confusion.
Okay.
This game has nothing to do with the Bravely Default developer.
Really?
It's developed by Acquire, the people that were recently making Akiba's Trip, the game where you like beat women until their clothes fall off or something.
Wait, what?
Yep, that's a whole genre in Japan. There's a trilogy of Akiba's Trip games where you like get people's clothes to come off.
1 second. I'd swear I was reading this on the website.
It's Acquire. That's the developer that used to make Tenchu like 10 years ago.
Here we go.
20 years ago.
Here's the confusion.
The
producers of the Bravely series are doing
Square
this.
Enix.
Yeah.
They produce like 50 games a year.
Well, no, looking at this, it actually means like the specific guys that did it, not just
right now. The
Square
people
Enix.
that made Bravely Default and Bravely Second are making Terra Battle 2.
Ah, all right. But so different dev studio, but the heads are apparently the same. But from my experience, it was actually kind of charming. I don't know how much they're going to charge for it and whatnot, and that would be kind of a deciding factor. But it looks like a good kind of return to form, traditionalist JRPG, which I guess charming. Like I Am Setsuna was lacking vision, and this one might too. But it is kind of nice to see kind of the return to more of the like old school there.
I'm just trying to imagine what game would. You knocking people's clothes off?
It's bad.
You're really focused on that.
This reminds me of when Wander was attempting to get me to watch an anime with him where, what was it, a cooking?
The cooking show where people's clothes fly off because they love the food so much.
Yeah.
Yes, that one. We couldn't get through the first, 2 episodes because it just became too awkward.
When initiated into battle, you have many weapons to choose from, such as computers, body pillows, and baseball bats. You can hit people with body pillows, which themselves tend to have a picture of a person on them because that's the whole point nowadays.
It almost feels like that almost feels like
the people developing the game he's talking about.
That almost feels like a weapon in EDF. But I guess developer pedigree aside, it's not a bad game from what I've seen, but I've only played 2 hours of it because effectively they give you the first half hour and then I was just like, I'm going to play a little bit more just to see what I can do. But so there's two different characters. It's not Penelope, it's Primrose. Primrose and Ulberich, I think it was. And so Primrose is like this female dancer, and apparently she's beautiful. So her interaction move is Allure. So you can play Pokemon with random townspeople. And by what I mean by that is you can literally just walk around town and find random villagers that you're like, you're going to help me out now. And they will just be a teammate that you can summon, and like they will fight for you.
And the strongest one in the village is the old man or something?
So you know how in like in old JRPGs, or actually just most RPGs, in every town there's like kind of the town greeter that's like, welcome to Bulbulburk, the land of the Silky Meadows, and that's all he says over and over and over again. He's the strongest person in the starting town.
Oh god.
And so I recruited him, and he just crushed almost everything for me. I mean, it wasn't like ridiculously OP, but it was just like weird to have the town greeter as this like old man, like grandmaster fighter guy just wrecking things for me. And I was just like, this is really silly, and I love it.
I've come up with a way to explain the visuals of this game, because I finally looked it up now, the screenshots, and like they basically took like Final Fantasy VI graphics, like the later day Final Fantasy 2D games that are sprites. Yeah. And then they turned it into a tilt-shift Paper Mario with the, like, parody, like, realism, air quotes, like, brown and bloomy effect, color filter that some games have as a joke. That's more or less what the game looks like. Very heavy tilt-shift in some of these scenes, by the way.
Yes. It's weird. It kind of works. I don't think it works as well in this one.
I don't think it works quite as well as that other weird anachronistic 2D, 3D game we talked about for E3. Which looked awesome. That cyberpunk-looking 2D, 3D hybrid mishmash thing.
That one looked a lot better. I think this one would have been much better if... And it might actually just be a symptom of this being the demo, but they have way too many repeating textures and whatnot, and it makes everything look kind of bad. Like I'm looking at a specific... Here, can I... I'm just going to send you to the...
I found a screenshot of them being in a cave, and the cave looks like all of those... Yeah, the picture with the rats, and it's that cave where I've actually seen those formations in real life. It's a thing where water pouring down the rock creates this weird thing where it looks like a chocolate fountain and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it's so little texture repeating so rapidly in such a little space. It looks like the game was like some part of like Ludum Dare, like make this game on only 50 megabytes challenge because they didn't have storage for like a slightly larger texture.
I'm really crossing my fingers that this is just the effect of it being in development, because it is not listed for this year. It's like sometime next year, so hopefully they add more to it, because even the voice acting was spotty. And
once again, why the releasable demos and
I think they just want to get people like in on it and talking about it. Like they were actively asking for feedback. So
do you think they'll change the title?
I hope so, because
Project Octopath Traveler sounds stupid, but also the logo has a tiny project in the corner with Octopath Traveler in big bold, but like in an unfiltered font.
I actually, I mean, they say working title, so it's probably not going to be the same thing. Like, it even on the Nintendo site, it says Project Octopath Traveler, working title in parentheses. But like one of my fans had suggested the name, like, why not just Eightfold Travelers or something basic? Like it's generic, but it would work. But hopefully they like go back in, because the combat system is great. Yeah, the combat system is great. The storytelling was like a little bit generic, but actually like good in its own right. And the like interesting mechanics for each character were fun. Because I told you about Primrose and how she could recruit people. The other guy, Ulberich, can challenge people to duels. Everyone. And so the way it's presented is like, hey, Ulberich, you're like this great fighter. Can you like train the town guard so you know they can fend off bandits better and the threats to the town? And he's like, okay, I can do that. But it's, you know, the old man of the town asking you to do this. And the cutscene ends, and you're supposed to go and train on these two dudes standing nearby. Except for I'm standing in front of the old man, who, as soon as the cutscene ends, has a little duel me symbol above his head. So I beat the shit out of the old man that's the headman for the town. The mother of the young child that had come to get us, the two guys, and just everybody else in town, to the point where the entire town was unconscious on the ground, and I was like significantly richer. And then bandits attack, and everybody's like on the ground again.
Person.
I was definitely
But no one cared.
Yeah,
They
no one
popped
cared.
back.
Everybody popped back up and was totally fine for the bandit attack. And mild spoilers, but like the little boy gets kidnapped, and the mother's like, "Oh no, you have to get my son back." And I'm like, "Yes, I can, lady." And then I promptly beat the shit out of her as soon as the cutscene was over, as well as the rest of the town. And then I went off to go rescue the kid.
But
Kind of
they
great
accept
when a
the duel.
mechanic applies to everybody in a video
Yes.
game. Like
It was magic.
a magical instance of this is in Dragon's Dogma, which is that the game tries to determine who your love interest is by just looking at NPCs that you interact with the most and stuff like that, and tries to determine who you would care the most about. And then in the
A lot of
climax of the
people-
story, the character of the game that the game thinks you care about the most gets kidnapped, and like you have to like resolve to do a quest as part of the main story to potentially save that person. But because of how they coded it, for a lot of people, just the most accessible, easy to find shopkeeper in the game tends to be
Yep,
your supposed
merchant.
love interest. And it's great. It's
Yep.
this bearded dude that you like don't even know the name
What?
of. and yeah.
That is pretty great.
He's just some shopkeeper that's in the middle of town square, and he's really easy to get to, and he's the most go-to character
I know
you would
exactly
use as a
who you're
shopkeeper.
talking about.
And that
I
dude
think I
is like
actually saw
gets
this.
kidnapped as your love interest, and the game treats him like your love interest because you had maximum like reputation with that character and stuff.
That is amazing.
It went to the
Chairs are
point where they
squeaking.
had to add a special sub-quest in the re-release or later version where they added a thing where you can get the Arisen's bond. It was like it was essentially the equivalent of like an engagement ring that you could give to somebody to lock them in as being the person that would happen to, because the core system didn't work because they would just kidnap the shopkeeper.
That's great. So the culmination of me dueling everybody was eventually more NPCs popped up in the town because the tutorial kind of like intro stuff was over, the prologue, and it's just like, okay, yeah, you're free to go about your business and do whatever now. And a couple more NPCs were in town. There was the head of the guard who I was not able to beat the tar out of originally, and there was also a barmaid. So I walk over to the barmaid and I'm like, oh, she's gonna be easy, and she's like, 6 stars out of 10 or something like that. And she just destroyed me with 2 spells. And I was like, that is a ridiculously strong barkeeper. Why? So I gave up fighting
This
her, and
wasn't
I'm like, okay.
accurately represented a difficulty range.
So I'm going to walk over and I'm going to go find that old man town greeter from the previous game and just fight my way up. And I was level 10. I don't know what the maximum level is. I fight the old man and he just crushes me too. He was even stronger than the barmaid. And I'm like, well, at least I saw this one coming, but like, yeesh. But I don't know. It was just really fun and charming, even if it was me mostly just abusing the mechanics for my own enjoyment.
We've been playing the hell out of Mario Rabbids lately.
It is good.
It's really fun. I just have one qualm with it that bothers me, which is
Okay.
that after you beat each world, they give you an ability that lets you unlock all the side route secret stuff throughout the world you just beat, to give you incentive to go play through it again. And then they pepper through that like 10 challenges that are essentially like, some of them are like difficult scenarios or like fend off this scenario. Some of them are like defeat everybody in one turn. And then some of them are like straight up like puzzle scenarios. And I have a bit of an issue with those just because this is a game where you can level up and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
you
like-
mean that the challenges are boring if you've gone too far past them?
They're boring to literally like pointless at times.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I stopped doing the challenges once I realized that I was just crushing them single-handedly.
So what I'm doing, because I'm only in the first world so far, is I beat the first world, then I'm going back and playing all the challenges afterwards of the first
That's what
world.
you're
and
supposed to do.
That's how I'm going to do the entire game. But I'm just noticing the obvious gap here is that if they're going to call them challenges, it really feels like you should be forced to play characters that have specific weapons and specific stat levels and specific exact range, that you have to actually beat the challenge as a player as opposed to just being better than it. Because yeah, like even the pre-order bonus or that the game gives you, which I didn't even pre-order the game, but they gave it to me anyway, of those like 8-bit guns are like
Yeah.
so powerful
Well, that was
that
the
you can
season
one shot
pass stuff.
I don't have a season pass or a pre-order, and I have them.
That's weird.
So like
Okay.
I have these guns that like break the progression a little bit, and like like having that kind of stuff means that when you get to the first challenges, you can just one shot most of the enemies, and like that.
How far are you in
pointless. I just told you, first world.
Oh, okay.
I played the first world, and now I'm doing the challenges. And I'm just saying, like, these challenges, if to fit the premise of the idea, should make you play as fixed characters.
Probably. If it makes you feel any better, I more or less did the exact same thing. But I would say once you get up to the third world of the game, it's actually not so bad because it kind of plateaus. Somewhere around there.
Here's the other issue, though, is that some of them are like survival scenarios that you just have to beat by being either cunning or high level or whatever. But other ones are puzzles. Yeah. And the puzzles rely on your characters having an exact movement range, an exact jump range, and so on and so forth.
I definitely had a couple of those where I just brute forced it because my Luigi was so much faster.
Yeah. Like the first one, he gets Quantum Leap, and the trick is that you have to do some really crazy stuff where you manipulate the enemies into knocking you into the goal, essentially. But you can literally increase your movement range with your experience points kind of whenever you feel like in this game.
Yeah.
So if you get high enough level, you can just run to the exit, or characters can reach each other and throw them to the exit, where in the default challenge setup at low level characters, you can't reach each other, so you have to use the enemies, which is the point of the puzzle.
Yeah. So again, like I was saying, the first two worlds, their challenges are probably going to feel a little odd as a result because they don't scale well. Like you can cheese them by being over leveled and stuff. The World 3 and World 4 challenges are scaled for World 4 and plus, so they're actually like hard enough. The only real problem is the first two worlds are kind of poorly balanced because the pre-order weapons are really strong for the first world, and then the golden guns you get from the secret chapter are really good for the second world. And then once you've got through the second world, everything actually levels out pretty hard, and you don't have to worry about it nearly as much as I think you probably are.
It's just
at least
it's
from
just
my
too bad
experience.
that there was an oversight for balancing like even basic movement distances in a puzzle.
I was actually saying that kind of as part of the game. I like the skill tree system. I think that was fine. I actually don't like the fact that that Mario, the cast of characters and enemies gain more HP and damage over the course of it. Because it's this like kind of silly arms race to nowhere. Because they all just scale mostly evenly. I guess in the end, my cast was a little bit tougher proportionally to the beginning of the game. Like Luigi could definitely take more than a couple of hits. But I almost wished everybody just had like 3 hearts, and that was 3 to 5 hearts. That's their health, and each gun does 3 to 5 hearts of damage. Because the scaling system felt a little stilted, especially like later on. Have you really looked at the skill trees for any of the guys, or no?
I mean, I've looked at them. There's not too much to them. A lot of them are almost the same, with like a really core difference of like each character having a super special second weapon that's usually different.
Sort of. So, who do you use primarily right now?
I use Mario, Luigi, and Rabid Peach, which is literally every character I have besides Rabid Luigi.
So I use Rabid Luigi over Rabid Peach. The heal from Rabid Peach was good, but Rabid Luigi gets a really strong dash attack. And if you build him right, his dash can one-shot things up until World 3. But it also procs the vampirism effect, which is whenever you hit an enemy that has been hit by a vampirism proc, you heal off of them. So he would dash into an enemy first, and then I'd shoot him and get like 100, 200 HP back. Rinse, repeat. And so he ended up being kind of the puzzle killer. Or not puzzle killer, but challenge killer. Him and Rabid Mario. Because the two of them have like the most ridiculous dash moves ever. And it's like, here's like 10 enemies, defeat them in 2 turns. And I'm like, Rabid Mario, just dash through all of them. And every time Rabid Mario dashes into something, they explode for 100 damage. So 5 tightly packed enemies explode and die. So like that very first challenge, all I had to do was just run Rabid Mario at it, and everybody else just stood to the side.
The dash mechanic is kind of strange, isn't it?
It is strange.
Like, you
but
have a movement range, but then you can run anywhere in that movement range to hit a dude, and then intuitively you would think, like, okay, now I need to, like, now I have to use my remaining move to go somewhere else. But, like, no, it actually doesn't. You can actually then continually run anywhere within your existing movement range you had originally, even if it's in clearly the opposite direction.
Yeah, I don't remember why, which game that's pulled from. That is definitely pulled from, like, another, like, kind of tactical Nintendo product, but I don't remember which one.
It took me a while to pick it up because intuitively I'm like, that would never work that way, right? It totally works that way, and I'm like, why does it work?
I figured it out immediately, and I was like, this is weird. It's so abusable. It's so wonderfully abusable.
Yeah.
But like, you kind of have
like
to.
someone like Rapid Peach, you can like just hit like 4 characters in a row with melee attacks, then run in the exact opposite direction for the entire original movement distance you had because it's not affected by dashing at all.
Yep.
And then like hit another character and like jump off of them into another enemy, and then finally go get around to firing your weapon and using your special. It's like, holy shit! You have like 7 stage turns sometimes.
Yeah, it was super satisfying, and like pulling off the right combo against like a ton of guys was just so gratifying. A lot of people have been like warning me, it's like, okay, by the time you hit World 2, it's going to be like really hard, and good luck getting, maximum was it gold trophies or whatever they are on every single one of them?
The coin ranking thing.
Yeah, except for Rabid Kong and the inevitable Bowser Jr. battle, I don't think you have to worry too much about that. But except for those 2 fights, I actually perfected every single chapter of the game up until those 2.
It seems the only 2 requirements are beat it next number of turns and don't let anyone go down, right?
Yeah, correct. And eventually you have a cast of 8 people, so if anybody gets injured, except for Mario, you can just hot swap them and not have to worry about it. So I tended to use all of my like secondary characters as suicidal meatbags up until they take too much damage, and then I pull them back and just hide them for the rest of the mission, and then switch them out for the next one. Though that generally didn't matter, because the Vamp Dash thing I was talking about, Rabid Ouija was never ever wounded. He was always full health, no matter how many times he got shot.
Your stats and percentages and behavior of every single input you do are so set in stone, aside from the 50-50 chance of hitting someone behind cover when you make the mistake of trying half the time. Like, there's so much stuff set in stone, there's so many mechanics that are consistent. It makes solving the level like a puzzle so satisfying throughout the campaign that it really does make you think like maybe the Skinner box, not Skinner box because it's not a Skinner box, but maybe the progression system shouldn't exist so it can be really balanced. That's
why I was saying everybody should have had fixed health, because it was such this like beautiful puzzle game, and they kind of ruined it by having it scale up like that. But even with the scaling, it still did feel quite puzzly the entire way through. Like, the joy of figuring out just how to complete a level perfectly was just super satisfying.
It's a real neat game. Came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well,
just showed up on our laps, like we heard about 3 months ago for the first time, I think.
Yeah, it showed up at E3. They had like maybe some words about it, and everybody's just like, "What the hell is this?" And it was good, and it was like, "Oh,
here we are." Unexpected big selling point of the Switch. All of a sudden,
yeah,
Rabbit and Mario.
The Switch is doing really well. We should probably switch to something that Shell can talk about. Do we want to talk about Divinity Original Sin to finish off?
We could. There's not very much to talk about yet because we played for 2 hours.
Oh, you actually just fell asleep.
Yeah.
Oh, did she actually fall asleep?
Yeah, she did.
I've been having a hard time keeping my eyes open this whole time, and I'm like, you guys are talking about rabbits. I will close my eyes, and then I notice that, when you're
about to go
to...
That'll bode well for our Divinity series we're about to record tonight.
Yeah, go take a nap. We'll play just a micro nap. You'll be fine.
But I took like a 2-minute nap? I don't know.
That's hardly viable. So
what are you, Tesla?
Last night, Bird and I, we we had that like first night, which was wonderful. The game was super satisfying, and then you're like, by the way, I'm not going to be available for another session tomorrow because I'm going to be at Andrews, and we're both like, no. So we decided we're just going to play through the stuff that we've already played through before, because we played the game on launch at early access with Stainless and Purple, who had actually thought the game was going to be a like Diablo. They didn't think it was going to be a turn-based RPG. They didn't think you'd have to talk to people.
At all? Or did they?
Stainless gave me a copy and said, we're playing this tonight. And I'm like, are you sure about this? And he's like, yeah, it looks fun. And I'm like, okay.
So he backed Divinity on Kickstarter. Isn't that how he got the copy?
Yeah, he backed it for like $200 or something like that.
Without even checking what it was?
Yeah, or asking me, seeing as I had a series on it. But so we get into it. We land on the island. We walk over, find an NPC to start talking to, and almost immediately Bird and Stainless check out and they wander off. And then eventually everybody is just attacking random things and nobody's communicating, and I'm trying to be like,
oh no.
Yeah, I'm trying to be like,
oh, that bad.
I was actively trying to be like, okay, so we probably want to keep together and we're going to have to actually read this because all of this matters. And then Stainless, okay, so in Divinity Original Sin, mild spoilers because this technically hasn't hit my channel yet. Well, no, it will by the time this episode goes up, and it will probably be fine for you. But there's that lizard lady that gets blown up. Stainless was the one that, yeah, Stainless was the one that walked into that dialogue, and he went 1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1. Okay, we're done.
What the fuck?
And then we fought the there's some crocodiles we'll fight probably tonight. And we fought that, and that was the end of it. And that was like an hour and a half long session. And that didn't even include the tutorial boat. Like the tutorial boat thing. The tutorial boat's new. It was new, yeah. You just wake up on the beach. You woke up on the beach in the demo session, and it was kind of, it wasn't a nightmare, but it was very clearly like the wrong people for the wrong game. Or like, well, I don't know how you want to say it, but like, that was not a good combination.
Yeah, I just looked up the Kickstarter, and you needed to pledge $90 for this game to get 4 copies for PC.
Oh, that actually wasn't so bad then. But
still, though, that's so far to dive in a game without even checking what it is.
Yep.
Like, I'll just get this CRPG and play it like Diablo. What could go wrong?
Yeah. So Bird and I decided... So in
Diablo, you really don't talk with anyone?
Not really.
Diablo really ruined top-down RPGs for a lot of people, didn't they? Because like I have to admit that happened to me at one point. Like, I played Diablo when I was like 10 years old, and eventually down the road I would try I eventually tried Dungeons and Dragons: The Temple of Elemental Evil, which I picked up at a store.
That game is good, but it is word heavy.
And I also tried Fallout, like 1 or 2. I don't remember what it was. That was because Fallout 3 was like, this is amazing. So I tried to play the previous ones. And in both cases, I was like, I literally don't understand how to play this game because I'd never heard of a CRPG before, and I was just dumped in like that.
Yeah, so like, it happened to me too. Really hadn't heard about them.
And it's interesting because, like, technically, like, if you think about it throughout history, like, I think the majority of top-down RPGs were CRPGs, not Diablo, like, dungeon crawler, like, click spam games.
Yeah.
But that's the most, like, the Diablo franchise are several of the most popular PC games of all time.
Yeah, well, it's because it's much easier to get into. Classic CRPGs are dense. Like, even Fallout moved away from them. Black Isle died. The only reason why they still exist is because of Larian Studios and Obsidian.
It leads to a thing where, like, CRPGs dominate the library catalog, but Diablo dominates the brain space for everybody. And, like, that's what everyone associates with that visual. So I can kind of see how that happens if, like, somebody just blindly just grabs... It's an RPG and it's top-down. It's you click on shit and blow it up. I get it. And then you get into it and you're like, these people are talking to me and they won't stop?
Yeah.
Why won't they stop talking to me?
It's not always voice acted, so sometimes like you have to just sit there and read, which really isn't a problem unless you're Let's Playing it. Just
the idea of somebody grabbing Divinity and being like, 1-1-1-1-1.
Yeah, it was...
Get over it. Go back to the fighting.
It was bad, especially so what Bird and I did was actually kind of the same thing. We made a pair of undead and spec'd them into poison magic and summoning and stuff. And we're like, we're just going to go through and we're going to fight anybody that displeases us, which ultimately became we were going to kill everyone. Every
Everyone
single
who
person
breathes.
Did your helmets blow off just like Keith's?
because we weren't what's your character's name, Keith?
Fane.
Yeah, because we weren't Fane, we didn't have helmets at all. We just had hoods. Turns out, by the way, if you take your hood off, everybody attacks you.
Yes.
Ooh.
That's the
We've-
warning I read to you when we started our campaign, was the warning of being an undead.
Well,
Which they would have shown you when you made your undead as a giant warning on the screen saying, here's what you need to worry about playing this character.
I was not paying full attention. And so what I did was I found
Beast hat.
Very
yeah, I
Stainless
found
of you.
Beast's I found Beast's like, Admiral hat, the dwarf.
Oh, God.
I found his hat and I'm like, yes.
I want to wear this captain hat and get attacked by everyone on site for the entire game.
And so when it came time for the lizard lady to blow up, instead they blew me up, and I was like, okay, hold on, reloading.
Yeah,
Let's,
the game warns you over and over and over again that if everyone sees your face, they'll kill you.
Yeah, so that was a very quick lesson to learn. And then we went in and started executing people because we said we can't talk to people because we don't want to spoil this. We don't want to make like Shell and Keith mad by knowing everything. So instead, we're just going to not talk to anybody. If we do talk to people, we pull a stainless and just mash that one button a bunch. And the game actually, to its credit, actually managed to be functional despite the fact that we killed anybody that could have told us anything.
Oh, yeah. That's
so-
what that genre often brags about.
So
Like, that's actually a bullet point on the Wasteland 2 box. It's the CRPG where you can shoot anybody, because the game will just figure out where to go from there.
So what happened was I was wandering around. I was specifically going after anybody that sold spells because I wanted as many spells as possible to mess around with which ones I wanted. Because I'm a little bit dissatisfied with summoning. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of early variety, so we're probably going to have to go a little bit further before we get that sort of thing.
Don't you mean polymorph?
Yeah. What did I say?
You said summoning.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've been jealous of your guys' summoning abilities over my kind of useless polymorphing, but whatever. But so I was going after that, and Bird's like, by the way, I pissed off a bunch of people. Can you come help? And I come over, and we're fighting like a billion NPCs in the middle of town. And I was like, okay, fine. It was really easy.
And how did he anger them?
By fighting them, probably. He would try and pick somebody off, but on the periphery. And then they would they would all just aggro on him. But apparently there's an elf in a cage who's, I guess you're supposed to do a quest, and he gives you a key. Well, we'd murdered everybody, so he pops out and he's like, oh, thanks for saving me. I'm glad you didn't listen to them. Here's the key, and here's how to get into the secret entrance. And I'm like, what? We were just killing everybody. And then we killed him and took the key anyway, but it was just this weird disconnect of kind of supposed to let you in anyway, but didn't quite rewrite it from the perspective of maybe some people are going to play this game like extreme sociopaths or psychopaths. I don't know.
New from EA, Extreme Sociopath.
Isn't that just hatred?
Sociopath Extreme 2017. Game of the Year edition.
But
pre-order now for the Justice's Blind Skin. Oh, man.
The other interesting thing is, because the tutorial boat isn't actually really part of the chronology, it's just supposed to teach you there. Every NPC that we killed, we murdered Beast, we murdered Fane, we murdered every single NPC on that boat.
Up?
They popped back up again, but since I had looted all their stuff, they popped back up again naked with weapons now. And so it was Beast with a pair of axes in his skivvies, no hat. And I was like, huh.
Interesting continuity there.
Yeah, and so they would actually get pissed at us for leaving them behind to die, and I'm like, did you miss the part where we murdered you?
Maybe they should have done a better job at also leaving the boat that was currently drowning. In all fairness, they know the boat's in trouble, and they're not going upstairs to escape. That seems like their own fault at some point. We go back and save them in our playthrough, but yeah, what are they doing at that point?
Yeah.
Were they shackled in other means? Or
No, they
weren't shackled.
They
They just stayed below deck when we went above deck, even though we know that the ship's in trouble. And then they just hang out and fight stuff that shows up later, and you have to save them. And that's what we did. But I'm like, why are they still down there? That's a weird choice for them to make.
It's the standard NPC without like actual agency, because they can't really have them move around too much, because that'll get weird.
Or awesome.
True. It is actually like a really good game, even from like the from the super genocide mode. Spell combos are just I don't know. I wish more games would do that. The
just
whole
watching
like
all the different elements exploded with each other, like in Magicka, but in a game that actually has mechanics and things to do more so than like a Nightmare Panic scenario.
Yeah, Magicka. I wonder if Magicka actually would have been a really good game if it was a turn-based. Like if it was just turn-based, like Divinity Original Sin. And it still probably would have been super broken, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that developer is really keen on making mechanically driven games necessarily, because like they made a competitive Magicka game, and even that one was like, I don't know about this idea. They made like a Magicka MOBA, Wizard Wars or whatever.
I heard it was kind of good.
It was a weird choice, because there's only so much to do in the game at some point, and it doesn't really have like, at least when I played it, which I think was early access at the time, there wasn't really like mechanics. There wasn't really like RPG mechanics or progression system, so it was literally like you're just like sort of charging each other's bases a bit. It's a weird bit at the very least.
Okay. Shell is going to actually nap. She is falling asleep. Should be fine. I haven't heard back from Bird on whether or not he's immediately available anyway. So, yeah.
So we got an email about the last podcast, and
oh, really?
I don't know if you can remember what they're talking about for sure or not, because I'm a little foggy trying to remember. Andrew Kantz asks, in your most recent podcast, you asked, it's the other stuff. In your previous episode of the podcast, the group indicates that some YouTube channels have sold out. Care to elaborate? What activities do you see them engaging in that I overlook? Do you remember the conversation we had? Because I don't remember this big specific conversation, but I think I know what I was talking about, because we've kind of mentioned it. I'm not gonna let's not do names, because names are always bad. But a common thing that YouTubers are kind of going for are aiming for like picking up games that are going to be really popular amongst like younger audiences and playing them like extremely hyped for like an episode or 3, and then moving on, because ultimately the game wasn't very good to begin with. They're just like, we got to find the next sort of pandering.
Yeah, the next game that will bloat my channel with more views and just more or less hop from one to the next.
There's kind of an incentive system built into YouTube, in just that like Wander and I have both experienced like giant growth spikes at some point in the past that were related to like a specific game at a specific time. And once that happens once or twice, it kind of like a YouTuber will often try to hunt that actively all the time.
Well, yeah, it's addicting to grow your channel, and it's also painful when it's slow.
Career maker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say Holy Potatoes, Weapon Shop, Scrap Mechanic, and Fallout more or less made my career in this. Obviously, there's a lot of other games that have helped, but those were the 3 biggest growth spikes after like Vagante and Catacomb Kids. But they single-handedly eclipsed everything else. And like now that I don't have Scrap Mechanic, I don't have Fallout like I used to, my channel has slowed down considerably. And so I can totally see why people would want to chase that specific thing as a business maker.
And like I had a restructure on my channel at one point where I specifically chose to like, no, I'm going to like finish things I start, but I'm also going to make my schedule a sane thing overall. And the thing that pays, the thing that ends up falling off when you do those two things, if you're going to be like, I'm going to restrict it so I'm only making this many videos per day, like a sane person would, but also I'm going to finish the things I start, is that like you can't start anything when it actually comes out immediately. And like, so like a lot of the channels that we talk about are channels that instead do the exact opposite of what I do, which is that they they make X number of videos per day like I do, but instead of caring about finishing stuff, they instead only play the hype nonstop all the time forever. And like there's a weird feeling of like the channel kind of losing its identity as it just focuses entirely on chasing every possible trend at all times, because you don't know what game's going to take off and which game's going to be the career maker for you, or which game's going to be a huge takeoff success video. So you're just going to make a video of every game that comes out that day and then drop it immediately to make the next one.
There's also kind of a critical mass, I would say, where you get, like, for example, if you're on YouTube and you're looking at thumbnails and you'll see like best game ever in like big bubbly text and like maybe a little bit of like some kind of gameplay asset in there in the corner, or like maybe somebody's face and they're like looking really shocked and excited, or
yep. A photoshopped brightly lit picture of somebody's face looking really hype while giant yellow bubble text pops up on the screen and the title's all in caps lock and with exclamation points, and it's just trying to hype.
Yeah, and you kind of hit this like weird critical mass, and it works. Like, that's the crazy part. Like, you think people get really bored of this, and, you know, maybe some older people definitely do, but younger audiences definitely don't get tired of this nearly as fast. And so this actually really is the moneymaker for a lot of these guys, is just hopping from one viral success to the next. And YouTube actually will kind of feed into this. Any video that's getting, you know, say thousands of views per hour will instantly go on the what's trending list and, you know, shows up on the front page, even if you're not subscribed to the person. And so a lot of these guys hop on this train, and you can grow your channel considerably as a result. But for us that kind of refuse to do that, it really does kind of feel like selling out, because it feels cheap, and it kind of feels like it's cheapening what we do.
I need to just point out how gargantuan your channel is right now real quick, Wander. Boy, oh boy. So I just looked at your last 30 days stats. You passed Splattercat.
Really?
That actually happened. You got more video views in the last 30 days than Splattercat. Holy shit.
I've actually been... Oh, yeah. I'd almost say, though, that's a metric of me being static, but stable, than him. Because I actually have not gotten... I have not grown much in the past year. More or less, I got up to about 2.5 million views, and then I've just been hanging here for a while, because ending Scrap Mechanic and Fallout has actually kind of killed me, and I've been like kind of scraping by. But that is neat. For people wondering why this is kind of important, for both Keith and myself, Splattercat was the channel that sat above us, always. Every series we would do, he'd probably also be doing, and he'd always be the one, you know, first paged on the search results, and it was just pervasive, so he was kind of always the benchmark. And it is actually weird to be passing him.
That's
sort of, well,
a standout leap. You're also not that stable. Like, you actually, your views per month increased by about 1 million about halfway through this year.
True. Well, so when I say static, I mean like a year ago, more or less a year ago today, was when Scrap Mechanic and Fallout were really, really taking off.
Yeah.
And then you can see that lowest point is actually when I'd stopped. I'd stopped both of them. That big dip was me stopping both Fallout and Scrap Mechanic in the same go. And that's why I went down so hard. It also coincides with the adpocalypse, which was not a pleasant feeling either.
Like, generally, like, when I look at Let's Play channels, what I hold as, like, a positive example for, like, the genre is something more along the lines of, like, Game Grumps or Super Best Friends Play, where, like, it's just a channel that does what it does, and it doesn't feel like it's being constantly motivated by outside forces to change what it does.
Yeah.
And so on various levels, other channels often sell out to do different behaviors. And you kind of lose your identity along the way. You kind of become like the other channels that are also all chasing the same trends, but also like there's just like it hurts the content itself when you're like, instead of doing what you want or having a specific vision for your channel, you're like obsessing over the exact thing that'll be successful at the next turn. Because like, if you watch Achievement Hunter, for example, which I think is an example of this, like if you've watched like over the years, like there's like the Minecraft series was like their core thing for the longest time on their Let's Play channel, and that was like a thing that was like for a period of time, it kind of felt like its own thing. It was like, oh, look at this. It's like they're playing on Xbox for some reason, and it's six six perspectives being edited interchangeably into one video. I'm like, this is like I'm not saying that's somehow an original thing no one's ever done before, but like that was like part of an identity of what an Achievement Hunter like Let's Play video was, like what that community would make together. But nowadays, when you look at that channel, like, they usually don't have ongoing Let's Plays. They basically have I think it's on Wednesdays it's Minecraft, and on Fridays it's Grand Theft Auto or something like, or Inverse or something like that. I've mixed them up or something, but like they have those two staples, and then the rest of their videos are usually like, here's the MOBA that paid us to make a video this week and stuff like that, and like they will be like thrown into this one game that's like the next hype thing that week, and none of them really know what's going on, and if the right people aren't in the office that day, who cares? Whoever's in the office is going to be making that video that day, and so they pass it off to somebody else to edit it, and somewhere in the video, usually Jack will like really awkwardly start explaining midway through, like, he'll start like trying to read the notes, basically, like the bullet points of like what they're supposed to say in the promotion video, because they're supposed to like talk about the bullet points that are basically supposed to sell people on the game. And so like that's like the other side, is like there's the people we talked about without naming names really, about like the people that just like chase trends at the cost of their own channel, and then you have also something like Achievement Hunter that like literally does ads for videos, where like their video is a paid promotion video, and they happen so often that it feels like most of them are that at some point, where they're just like, we're playing this game because it's coming out this week and the developers are paying us to do it. Here's the bullet points that we're going to really inorganically implement into the commentary about what's going to sell you on the game. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like what the point of making this kind of channel anymore. And it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. It is a bummer. I can also understand the like flipped perspective. I mean, Rooster Teeth has grown considerably over the years. They're a big thing. They have games, TV shows coming out of it, and as such, like, monetization, especially through YouTube, which has been historically extremely, well, you said it was super consistent for you, but like I got hit kind of bad, and like I'm still not as good as where I was a year ago and stuff like that. And like I can see why
to never actually make that much money on YouTube, and then you can't lose it that much.
Yeah, it's be poor and accept being poor. But like for Rooster Teeth, they very clearly have, like,
begrudge these people too hard, because of the fact that like I did a budget recently, and it was a kind of a cynical budget to be more safe about it. And yeah, like my margin for error of like money to spend on like my disposable income, the stuff that's not accounted for by all of my bills and living and average cost of like food prices per month and stuff like that, like my leftover money based on my projected income each month is like $200.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like I understand the idea of like going that length. Like, here's the stuff that makes you more money. Like both sides of the sellout spectrum we've talked about here is like, I totally get it, because it's your life and you gotta do shit. Like, it's certainly an easier pill to swallow than like going back to working at restaurants or cubicles or whatever to make the same money that you didn't want to make because you were afraid your YouTube audience might think you were selling out or something. Like, I get it. Although I still recoil every single time somebody tries to get me to do an ad, which has been every single time. I'm like, I just don't respond.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable to even think about it, but I get it though. And people in my family would be mad at me if they found out that I don't do ads when they approach me, because I'm like, I don't have money. That's a real issue. But we do it for fun, right, Wander?
Yeah. No, I've been having a lot of fun, actually. I know you're not a big fan of the... I'm going to switch gears for a second, because there's a couple of games I want to mention before we go... we go probably on break and wait for Bird and Shell to be ready for Divinity Original Sin. But you never cared about Homestuck, right? It was just kind of like a thing on the internet for you.
It's not even that. It's a
You don't
word.
know what it is? Yeah. Okay,
It's a
so
word
Homestuck,
that keeps coming up, and that's all I know about it.
So you know how Undertale was like crazy popular, right?
Yeah.
So Homestuck was the progenitor for what Undertale was. The guy that made Undertale was one of the guys working more or less on Homestuck. He did a lot of the music and stuff like that, but he like literally would hang out at the creator of Homestuck's house. And so they kind of fit into that same genre. Not genre. They're completely separate products, and but it's still kind of the same target group and evokes similar feelings. And so Homestuck was like this lengthy webcomic. I think it spanned like almost a decade or something like that. I read it throughout college, and like when I picked it up in college, there were hundreds of pages of it. And then it went on hiatus, and then it came back later, and there were hundreds of new ones, and I'm like, I'm not touching this. But so in the final couple of years of working on this webcomic, which was like slowly adding like mini games as part of it, and like animations and like mini movies and stuff. It was insane. The creator, Andrew Hussey, started development on a video game, and he ran a Kickstarter for, I think it was $1.5 million. It was a lot of money.
Really tiny divergence, but Toby Fox is younger than us.
Really?
He's 25.
Damn.
Wow.
Good for him. Good for him.
Undertale's like 3 years old now, isn't it, or something? Like,
oh, yeah.
So he was like, what, 23 when it came out or something?
Yeah, 22, 23 when he put it together. I mean, it makes sense. There's a number of college grads that make some pretty good shit. But so at the tail end of not Undertale, Homestuck, they started work on Hive Swap, which is game came out this week. But thing is, they ran a Kickstarter, and they more or less gave the money to the guys that made the King's Quest game that you kind of liked. And they took that money and made King's Quest instead.
Boy, oh boy.
And yeah, so they took his money and ran. So he spent a couple of years more or less trying to get that money back. Because, like, you don't just pay somebody to be, you don't pay somebody to do something for you and then have them not do it. That's like, no way. And so he still had some of his own money, and I'm fairly certain like he had a fair amount from Homestuck because of its popularity.
Third highest funded video game on Kickstarter history of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that fan base was rabid. It actually was the reason why I stopped reading it, and the reason why I stopped going to conventions so much, because when I picked it up, I thought it was like, oh, it's this like neat webcomic with kind of dumb jokes and whatever. And then I made like a really quick and easy cosplay for it, and I got hugged more times that weekend than I've ever been hugged in my life cumulatively, and it was really uncomfortable. Yeah, I didn't like it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna distance myself from this because this is getting problematic. And like, these people would travel in hordes, and like, we would have artist alley tables and sell stuff, and we just have a horde of gray-skinned candy corn horned folks just standing in front of our table and like talking about their whatevers. I wouldn't pay attention. We'd actively have to like tell them to go away because they were interfering with our sales and always give us dirty looks. But so after years of kind of like pseudo development and like setbacks, they actually put out the game, and it's really good. Sort of. It's like just a point and click adventure game, but you know how like
now I know not to play Hive Swap.
I'd actually maybe recommend it. It's a little bit tied into...
I feel like I don't want to poke this thing I don't know about that people freak out about too much.
Yeah, probably. But it's actually like a charming little game because they have... so, in adventure games, you get items that you can use on something else. Very classic King's Quest style. Except for every single one of them, there's a text box. Every environment object interaction, even if they make no sense, there is a lengthy like blurb about the character's thoughts or something,
including puppy surprise.
Yeah, so there's like a puppy surprise where the main character's like stored all of her precious belongings, and Shell is back again.
Only to talk about Puppy Surprise.
Let's not.
Oh, please, can I at least explain it?
But no.
Okay, so back in the early 90s, there was a stuffed animal toy series called Puppy Surprise, Kitty Surprise, Bunny Surprise. And essentially what you did was you purchased a mother puppy cat. Well, actually, mother puppy wouldn't be a puppy. It would be a mother dog. A dog, cat, or bunny. And they'd be brightly colored. And they had a Velcro pouch in their stomach. You'd open them up and you would get a randomized number of puppies, randomized gender, randomized faces, and colors. So no one ever got the same puppies, kittens, bunnies inside their Puppy Surprise. Yeah, that's what it was. So I was just ecstatic when you were, scrounging around her room and...
Yeah, she just had one on her bed where she was keeping her diary key and this, like, creepy, eldritch-looking key.
And I was just like, Puppy Surprise! I had one. It was a brown dog, and it had 4 puppies.
Oh, yeah. I literally opened the first image on Steam, and it's clearly there.
Yep. But I guess I just really enjoy having this more or less super easy, relaxing adventure game with so much insane environmental detail that you can click on for more insane environmental detail written out in lengthy words.
Didn't they have movie posters on the wall of like the never-ending story and stuff? But they had them change
Yeah,
titles.
They had fake ones to avoid issues. So they had, I think
the story never ends.
Yeah, the never-ending stories one was like it never ends or story never ends or something like that.
They had that in Observer. When you get to this one guy that's obsessed with werewolves, you get into his room and it says a vegan werewolf in London.
I actually just watched An American Werewolf in London a couple days ago. Had never gotten around to it. It was interesting.
But so I don't know. Hive Swap was surprisingly good for an $8 game, though. I think it's like total going to be about $32 because I think it's split into 4 acts plus some kind of sequel.
And comments are claiming it's like 2 hours long.
Yeah, well, it's longer than that if you actually read everything. Because I want to say 2 hours into the game, and I think I'm in the 4th room. I have not moved very far.
It's one room for half an hour.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And it turns out that I've been missing things, because for the first episode, I didn't even know you could click on everything with everything else. I was just clicking on the environmental details and moving on. I didn't try putting the diary key on everything. Except for you also get tap dancing shoes, ballet shoes, and a flashlight. And apparently you can click on those and then click on everything else for even more details. And then you can click on each other. It's a mess of words, but I was actually like really happy with how like charming and detailed it was. Let's see.
I'm just trying to decipher these screenshots.
They're dense. It is a very dense adventure game.
Yeah, that's a really dark and concerning controversy in the background there with the Odd Gentleman and stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, what's concerning?
The developers of the King's Quest games, Odd Gentleman, more or less stole $800,000 to fund a different video game.
Wait, so was it like something where they kickstarted something or did something else? Like, whose money was it?
It was So Andrew Hussey, the creator of Homestuck, kickstarted Hive Swap.
Okay.
And gave $800,000 to a development studio to make Hive Swap. And they said, sure, thanks, we'll get right on it. And they made a completely different game.
Ew.
Yeah. Like, anytime I hear of a developer do that, I'm just like, oh, how did you...
I wonder if the connection's there or if it's just like a rumor that took fire or something. Like, I wonder if anyone official has come out and like and called attention to this, or if it's always been like a weird like John and Aaron are fighting like rumor. Just because like King's Quest was published by Activision, like the idea that they would need like did you say $8,000 from the Homestuck people?
Yeah,
800,000.
Just the idea that they'd need to pocket Homestuck money when their games being published by Activision seems weird. But I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's super hush-hush, probably because lawyers are involved.
All I know is that the first episode of King's Quest was really good, and none of the other ones were as good as the first one. And it's really interesting that the first one's the free one you can play, because then I can like be like, "Hey, go check out that free first episode of King's Quest," and then stop.
Yeah, so technically, the not official word, but from what everybody's gathered is they got a lot of money from Hussey, and then they didn't make a game. They didn't really do much of anything. I think it got kind of Duke Nukem Forever'd. And then they made King's Quest, so there might not be a connection
for that. They announced that they were being added to the project in like June, and then they announced that they were no longer on the project in October.
Wow.
Like it's there wasn't even like developer hell. It was like a couple months, and then they were off the project. Like whatever happened there was like fast.
But yeah, chances are if lawyers are involved, nobody can talk about it. I would not be surprised if the entire thing might never fully come to light just because of legal NDAs and dumb bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, I know that Hussey is very protective of his IPs and stuff, too. Especially when it comes to, I think you guys were talking about artist alleys and, you know, people trying to churn out videos quickly for a couple games. It's sort of like that with the fan art community. People are technically not supposed to be making money off of fan art. Especially for various IPs, and people will, and they'll just hop from new series to new series, make a, you know, what?
No, keep going.
And the problem is, then they don't have any art of their own, nothing of their own unique characters or IP, and if ever they get slammed with, you know, a DMCA or a copyright or anything, then they're in a bad place. It's not like that for you guys, though, but...
So, my last thing with it is, you know, obviously it's so jam-packed with writing, which I really love because it's nice and snarky and amusing to read. But since there's so much details, I was kind of like, should I do this? Should I not do this? And a lot of people were like, yes. And there's always that small minority that I almost never have to deal with that are like, stop reading the game. Like, go do other things. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? This is the game. There's nothing else to it.
Well, I reached peak levels of stupid for that before, because there's a specific subgenre of like indie game walking simulator games that are all like in this post BioShock world of being inspired by heavy environmental storytelling, and like it's the stuff that is like Gone Home, or what I actually played in this case would be more so What Remains of Edith Finch. And, like, people there's always that guy that's like, just fucking go to the next place already. It's like, literally the point of this game is what I'm doing. Like, that's what you're that's what you're supposed to do, is go look at all the shit and, like, do stuff. And, like, there's always the idiot that's like, no, beat it very fast and run past everything.
I always do that instinctually because I think
it's... That, like, I already got a comment that's like, over an hour and still on the boat on Divinity. It's like,
That's the point. What are we supposed to do? Just, are we supposed to race through this?
Yeah. I investigate everything instinctually because you never know when something's going to be relevant later on to, you know.
Oh, yeah. No, Divinity Original Sin is definitely going to be one of those where you have to. Well, you don't have to, but, like, if you are super thorough, like, eating that lizard lady's leg means we've learned potentially a villain's name, which is cool. But also,
are you sure it was the villain?
So she was trying to save somebody. Sorry, somebody. Yeah. Whatever. It's an important thing, regardless.
It's so important that you definitely didn't remember it.
Well, it'll be important later when we meet the guy. We're going to be like, oh, that's the guy, and
that's the guy. Get him, because apparently I think he's a villain.
Hey, look, I have fire magic. I can start fights whenever I want.
We just start writing things down. Apparently. It's been interesting seeing the comments for that series already, because people are immediately... It's only been like 2 or 3 people, so I don't know if there's anything to go on, but like there are some people that are actually taking the exact opposite stance that I would expect. Because for me, I'm like, we've got to carefully stick together, and like we're recording this, we got to share the perspective and be able to tell what's going on, and I think that's correct that the fewest people will be bothered by that. But there are people on the other side that like everybody should split up and do whatever the fuck they want, and like you choose to share whatever information you choose to share with each other, like in an actual D&D campaign, and maybe you are competing against each other, so you use the chance to like get the advantage against the other players towards the final goal at certain moments by getting things from them. But like, I just like it might be an interesting experiment, but that could go wrong so immediately.
Well, the main problem is just like there'd be editing that would be a small nightmare. That's part of the reason why I was actually asking, do we want to do the adversarial quests and missions? Because every time that happens, we'd effectively have to leave TeamSpeak or mute TeamSpeak so you couldn't hear everybody else in the background. Because if I'm talking to NPC, I don't want to hear you and Bird making a joke about something when I'm trying to actively learn a detail that I might then use against everybody. It really does feel like one of those neat things that would be great, but would not at all work on a YouTube series.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just trying to think of like what, like it's hard to make a call because we don't know how it works until you already know how it works, at which point it's already spoiled. So it's like,
yeah,
it's
it's
hard.
I think it wouldn't be a problem if we were just playing as friends that weren't trying to like commentate over the game and make a series on it. But because we're trying to make a series on it and like have it be presentable, if one person is going around gathering all of the details and like not cluing anybody else in, it's inherently going to detract from the experience of everybody else.
Yeah, because there could be like hours of wandering around, encountering NPCs whose quests are already done, and stuff that's already taken, and like things that are destroyed, and like it could be so like. It's one of those things where like it's almost like the only way to handle it would be to have like almost like we'd have to agree to record at the same time but not in communication with each other, and we'd be specifically playing separately from each other, then giving all of our hundreds of hours of footage to somebody else for them to do the multi-perspective camera editing that highlights the reality show style drama from the multiple perspectives of how different things affect different people. Like, holy crap.
Yeah,
I don't think we can handle that.
I don't think it's worth it, and I think it would get really frustrating. Maybe if we were like local with each other, that could work. But even then,
you'd essentially need another person who already beat the entire game to have some idea to give us the advice of how to play the game and to make the adversary thing even work. Because we don't now, like we literally have no way of knowing how any adversarial stuff works at all. Like,
yeah,
no
we haven't played enough into it to see.
We haven't even had like a conversation like in the first game where you would be like talking to each other. Like we haven't even gotten that much yet. So like we just know so little so far that we can't really make a call reasonably yet. But we'll see. Just maybe we'll learn something along the way.
I'm just inclined against betrayals and backstabbing, especially in like a long series, because if the well somehow does get poisoned, it only gets worse.
I'm just wondering, like, I don't want to actively spoil any of it, but I'm wondering how it ends. Like, do we get to this entire quest line together as a group, and then at the last minute, it's like the end of a Castle Crashers level, like everyone just dukes it out for the final victory?
I mean, that would be amusing. I would actually be fine with that if we get to the very end, and then it's just like, by the way, now you get to pick who it is, and it's not like the person that has been most like meritorious through the entire game gets it. It's just like, sudden death match. Good luck, go. Like, I know that would be kind of frustrating, but I think that would be the only way to do it without really pissing anybody off. But I don't know.
We'll see.
I just don't like games that inherently pit you against your friends unless the entire point of the game is to pit you against your friends.
I like playing co-op for co-op.
Yeah.
The good news is we're so early on that we really don't have to worry about it yet, because we're still like literally learning what the story is of the game, let alone what to do.
Watch us start playing in the next 10, 15 minutes, and then it's just immediately like, by the way, backstab your friends. It's like,
We'll see. I'm wondering to see if like any 4-player dialogue will pop up at some point like it did in the previous game, and that might affect some.
Bird and I ran into 2 of those. We just ignored them. We just mashed the button and walked away.
All right, well, then I guess it will come up. All right, guys. Well, this has been the latest podcast. Thanks for watching. I think we're ready to get going. I see Bird waiting in chat. I see him lying in wait. He has returned with a maybe progressively in the future, over time, less sick bunny, perhaps. Or maybe a raving rabbit. Who knows?
Oh, God.
See you guys next time.